My name is Naomi, and I'm 30 years old. I'm an event planner by profession, someone who lives by schedules, budgets, and flawless execution. I've organized everything from lakeside weddings to corporate retreats, but nothing prepared me for what happened when I planned my own parents' 35th wedding anniversary. Growing up in our family, I always knew my role: the responsible one, the fixer, the one who never let anything fall apart. I'm the middle child, sandwiched between my older sister Madison, the golden girl who could do no wrong, and my younger brother Mason, the baby of the family who everyone coddled and forgave without consequence. And then there was me, Naomi, the reliable one, the one who stepped in when things fell through, who paid for what others forgot, and who got a tired thank you if she was lucky. When I was 18, I started contributing to household bills. Not because I was asked politely, but because Mom said, "You're good with money, Naomi, and your brother's too young to help." That line never changed, even as years passed and Mason stayed, too young, well into his 20s. Madison, on the other hand, was always celebrated for the bare minimum. When she got her college acceptance letter, there was a full backyard party. When I graduated, it was a handshake and a good job before Mom turned back to stirring her sauce. My childhood trained me well for the role I'd continue playing into adulthood, the dependable background support no one applauded. That pattern never changed. A few years ago, when Dad turned 60, I organized a surprise birthday dinner at his favorite steakhouse, booked the private room, arranged catering, invited his friends, even ordered a custom cake shaped like a fishing boat. The whole evening cost me over $2,000. Madison showed up an hour late, made a toast, and somehow became the center of attention. Mason arrived empty-handed, ate the most, and left with leftovers. Neither of them offered to contribute. And when I gently brought up costs later, Mom smiled and said, "Oh, honey, not everything has to be about money." No, not everything. But maybe just once, it could be about fairness. So when Mom sent a message in our family group chat titled Walker Family Chat with the announcement, "It's our 35th wedding anniversary this June. We should plan something special," I knew what was coming. I waited. Within minutes, Madison replied, "Naomi should handle it. She's the best at this kind of thing." Then Mason chimed in, "Yeah, she's a pro. I mean, planning's her whole job, right?" I stared at my phone, not surprised but still stung. There was no "do you want to do it?" or "should we split responsibilities?" Just automatic delegation. As always, I took a breath before replying, "I'm happy to help plan, but can we discuss sharing the cost this time? I think it's fair if we all chip in equally." The chat went silent. For hours. Finally, Mom replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Madison responded the next morning with, "Let's figure that out later." Mason said nothing. I knew what that meant. The answer was no. Still, against my better judgment, I proceeded. Because deep down, despite everything, I still wanted to believe that this time they'd show up, for the event, for me, for the family they claimed to care so much about. I wanted this anniversary celebration to be special. Not just for my parents, but for me too. I wanted to feel like I belonged. I wanted them to see the work I put in. I wanted to matter. So I opened my planner and wrote the words I'd written 100 times for clients. Event, Walker 35th Anniversary Celebration. Location, TBD. Budget, unknown. Responsibility, Naomi Walker. Once I took the reins of planning the anniversary, things quickly snowballed. I began researching venues that could accommodate our family and a few of my parents' longtime friends. I knew Mom would want something picturesque, flowers, outdoor seating, a vibe that screamed, "We still got it after 35 years." Dad would want something quiet with space to grill or fish nearby. Madison would definitely want good lighting for her social media posts, and Mason? He'd want somewhere with activities to keep his kids busy. After narrowing it down to a few solid choices, I spent my evenings putting together comparison sheets, price, amenities, catering options, and logistics. I shared them in the group chat. Responses trickled in. Mom liked option 3. Dad thought the lake view at option 2 was nice. Madison asked if option 1 had valet parking. Mason asked, "Is there Wi-Fi?" Not a single person acknowledged the prices, or offered to contribute. When I gently reminded everyone that we still needed to finalize cost sharing, the chat went silent again. I followed up with another message. This time, Madison replied, "We'll talk about that closer to the date." It was the same line every time. I could feel it happening again, me taking full responsibility while everyone else coasted. But I pushed those feelings aside and kept going. Eventually, I chose Willow Creek Garden Resort, a beautiful venue tucked just outside of town. It had a manicured garden for photos, a gazebo, a scenic pond for Dad, a small playground for Mason's kids, and plenty of open space for guests. It was perfect and expensive. The full-day rental with access to amenities came to $2,700. Add catering estimates at around $1,000 and miscellaneous costs, like decorations, cards, and a photographer. I was looking at a bill of roughly $4,000. I told myself it would be worth it. Maybe this time they'd realize what I do for this family. I began finalizing details, meeting with vendors on my lunch breaks, coordinating menus that included gluten-free pasta for Madison, lemon chicken for Mom, steak for Dad, vegetarian options for Mason's wife, and of course, kid-friendly items for Mason's children. I made sure everyone's preferences were accounted for, even the ones that changed last minute. The more I planned, the more the resentment simmered beneath my skin. I was staying up past midnight designing personalized name cards, putting together a memory slideshow, and collecting old photos of my parents from their early years. Meanwhile, in the chat, Madison was asking if she could bring her new boyfriend, and Mason said his wife might not come because she wasn't feeling social lately. Still no one brought up money. When I sent a final breakdown and gently asked if each adult could contribute $1,000 toward the total cost, Mom reacted with a heart emoji. Madison gave me a thumbs up. Mason didn't respond. I showed the messages to Erin one night as we sat in my apartment, wine glasses in hand. She raised an eyebrow and said flatly, "You're literally funding their party, and they're treating you like a party planner they forgot to pay." I laughed bitterly because she was right. I had clients who respected me more than my own family. Still, I clung to the thought that maybe, just maybe, when the day arrived and they saw what I'd done, they would finally appreciate me. Not for what I gave, but for who I was. The week leading up to the anniversary felt like preparing for a royal gala. Every evening after work, I checked lists, confirmed reservations, printed materials, and finalized every last detail. I had ordered customized place cards for each guest, including photos of family memories. For Mom and Dad, I selected one from their wedding day and another from a beach trip we took years ago, one of the few times we'd all genuinely smiled in the same photo. For Madison, I chose a picture from her high school dance recital that Mom still talked about. For Mason, one where he scored a goal in a soccer match back in 10th grade. For the kids, I had included artwork they'd drawn, which I'd quietly collected during my last visits. I wanted everyone to feel seen. I even made sure the caterer had separate containers for anyone with allergies or preferences. The night before the event, I stayed up packing decorations, folding cards, and finishing the slideshow that would play on a rented projector. Around 11 p.m., I sent a final message in the group chat. "Everything's ready. Can't wait to see you all tomorrow at Willow Creek. Setup starts at 9 a.m. Event officially begins at 11. Let me know if you're bringing extra guests so I can update food count." Madison replied, "Might bring Ryan too," referring to her new boyfriend. I adjusted the head count in my spreadsheet. Mason finally responded, saying, "We'll be there, but Jen's still not feeling great. Might just be me and the kids." I nodded to myself, mentally adjusting again. Erin checked in that night via phone. "You okay?" she asked. "You sound exhausted." "Just nervous," I said honestly. "I really want this to go well." "It will," she assured me. "And if it doesn't, you'll know where you stand. Either way, you'll be okay." I appreciated that more than she knew. I went to bed just past midnight with my alarm set for 6 a.m. The next morning, I woke up groggy but energized. I dressed in a soft rose-colored dress. One mom had once said brought out my eyes. I arrived at Willow Creek at 8:30 and the venue manager, Emma, greeted me warmly. "Everything's ready for you, Naomi. You're one of the most organized clients we've had. she said as we unloaded the catering boxes from my car. I smiled, brushing away the fatigue. Thanks, Emma. I want this to be special. By 10:30, the tables were set, the place cards arranged, and the food trays warming. The slideshow was cued, and the photographer I hired was on the way. Everything looked perfect. I stood back, taking it all in, pride bubbling up through my tiredness. I sent a final text. All set here. See you all soon. I sat at the main table, nervously straightening napkins and checking my phone. 11 o'clock came. Then 11:15. Then 11:30. No one had arrived. The photographer showed up and began setting up equipment. I smiled awkwardly and said, "They're probably on their way." He nodded and began photographing the decor in the meantime. At 12 o'clock sharp, I finally got a text. Mason. Wait, was that today? My stomach dropped. Seconds later, Madison texted. Running behind. Traffic's terrible. I called Mom. No answer. I called Dad. Straight to voicemail. I felt a dull, growing pain in my chest. The food was getting cold. The venue was charged by the hour. My carefully placed decorations looked increasingly empty. At 12:30, my phone finally rang. It was Mom. I answered quickly. Hey, where is everyone? Her voice was casual. Oh, Naomi, didn't you get our messages? We moved the party to Madison's house. It was last minute. Everyone's here. I blinked, stunned.
What? When?
No one told me.
Oh, dear.
Maybe the message didn't go through, she said as laughter and music played in the background. We just figured it'd be easier. Closer for everyone. Madison has that new patio, you know. Mom, I said slowly, I've been here since 8:30. I paid for the venue. I set everything up. You all confirmed yesterday. Well, things change, sweetie. Don't take it personally. Want me to bring you some leftovers? I couldn't even respond. I just stared out at the empty tables, the forgotten details, and the cold food trays that once held my hope. I stood there for a moment, gripping my phone like it might shatter in my hand. My mind was trying to catch up with the reality I was staring at. The tables I had set with care, the perfectly arranged place cards, the warmers filled with food. Everything now felt like a cruel joke played on me by the people I had spent my entire life trying to please. I ended the call without another word and sat down at the main table. The photographer walked over cautiously, his camera hanging at his side. Should we wait a little longer? He asked gently. I looked at my watch. It was nearly 1 p.m. No, I said, my voice quiet. You can go. No one's coming. He nodded respectfully, packed up his things, and left without charging me the full rate. Emma, the venue manager, noticed the change in mood and came over. When I explained what had happened, she looked horrified. That's terrible, she said. You put so much into this. She helped me box up the food and decorations. I tried to remain composed, but each item I packed felt like a piece of my dignity being tucked away and sealed shut. Around 2:45 p.m., just as I was loading the last container into my car, Mom's SUV pulled into the parking lot. She stepped out, smiling as if everything was normal, holding a mismatched plastic container in one hand and adjusting her sunglasses with the other. There you are, she called out brightly. We missed you today. Madison's backyard looked amazing with the new landscaping. You should see it sometime. I just stared at her. My heart wasn't beating fast anymore. It had settled into an eerie calm. She walked up and handed me the container. I brought you some leftovers, she said cheerfully. Inside were bits of salad, dried chicken, and a couple of cookies. Sorry we didn't get to connect earlier. You know how things go. You're always so busy with all this. She waved a hand at the beautifully decorated, now deserted venue behind me. We figured you wouldn't mind if we adjusted the plan a bit. Something broke inside me, not loudly, not violently, but finally. I placed the container on the passenger seat of my car, looked at her, and said, Thanks. Aren't you coming back to Madison's? She asked, brushing a crumb from her shirt. Everyone's still there. Mason set up the badminton net. I shook my head. No, I don't think I will. Oh, Naomi, she sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. Don't be like that. Like what? I asked calmly. Like someone who expected her family to show up for something she worked months to organize? Like someone who spent $4,000 thinking maybe, just this once, it would mean something? Well, no one asked you to spend that much, she said defensively. You always go overboard. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so familiar. Right, I said. Overboard. That's what you call effort in this family. I got in the car, started the engine, and drove away, the container of unwanted leftovers sliding slightly on the passenger seat beside me. The silence in the car was suffocating. No music, no phone calls, just the sound of my tires humming against the road. When I reached my apartment and stepped inside, the numbness that had held me together began to crack. I set the container on the kitchen counter, stared at it for a few seconds, then picked it up and threw it straight into the trash. The moment the lid slammed down, the tears came. Not delicate tears, raw, gasping sobs that bent me at the waist and dropped me to the floor. I sat there for what felt like hours, crying into my hands, grieving the family I wished I had, and the reality I could no longer deny. When my phone rang, I grabbed it quickly, hoping, stupidly, that maybe someone had realized how badly they'd hurt me. But it wasn't Mom, or Dad, or Madison. It was Erin. How'd it go? She asked, cheerful and hopeful. I couldn't speak. I just cried. Naomi? What happened? She asked, her tone shifting immediately. Between sobs, I told her everything. When I finished, there was a long silence on her end. Then she said, I'm coming over. Don't move. Less than 30 minutes later, Erin was at my door with 2 bottles of wine, and that fire in her eyes she always got when someone hurt me. They didn't just forget you, she said as she listened to me recap every moment. They excluded you. Deliberately. They threw their party at Madison's house and left you out again. I nodded. My tears had stopped, but the ache was still there, lodged deep in my chest. And they brought me leftovers, I whispered. Erin stood, pacing with her wine glass. They treat you like an assistant, Naomi. No, not even. An assistant gets paid. You're the free labor they've taken for granted for years. I nodded again, this time with something harder forming beneath the sadness. I think I'm done, I said. I think I need to be done. Erin paused, looked at me seriously, and raised her glass.
Finally, she said.
Now, let's figure out what done looks like. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache, a mix of the wine and the emotional whiplash from the day before. I shuffled into the kitchen and stared at the garbage can where the plastic container of leftovers still sat, now soggy and leaking slightly through a ripped corner. It was like a physical reminder of every time I'd been handed scraps while giving everything. I sat at my dining table with my laptop and opened a blank spreadsheet, something I usually used for client event budgets. But this time, it wasn't for a wedding or a product launch. It was for me. I titled it, Family Expenses, Past 5 Years. One by one, I began listing everything. The Colorado cabin rental for the Christmas trip, $2,750. Airfare for Mom and Dad, $1,100. Ski lessons for Mason's kids, $625. Mom's 60th birthday dinner, $4,000. Custom decorations, $300. Photographer, $250. Madison's rent during her divorce, $4,800. New tires for her SUV, $500. Mason's car repairs, $2,500. Camp fees for his kids, $850. Dad's fishing boat down payment, $3,200. My total grew with every line. I cross-checked receipts, bank statements, old emails. When I hit the final sum, I had to pause. It wasn't just a number, it was a gut punch. $62,000 plus in 5 years. An average of more than $12,000 a year, money that could have been used for a down payment on my own home, or a second car, or expanding my business. I was shocked by my own generosity or stupidity. I closed my laptop slowly, and leaned back in my chair. The silence of my apartment felt different now, less lonely, more liberating. Erin called later that afternoon. "Have you thought about what you're going to do?" she asked. "I'm not sure," I admitted. Cutting them off completely doesn't feel right. But pretending like nothing happened isn't possible either. "What if it's not about punishment?" she said. "What if it's about boundaries? Like protecting your time, your energy, your wallet?" That word, boundaries, landed hard. I'd spent my entire life bending, adjusting, absorbing. Maybe it was time to draw lines. Clear ones. That night, I opened my financial planning software again. This time, I created professional-looking invoices, just like the ones I sent to my clients. I added a logo at the top. Naomi Walker Events, Family Ledger. Each invoice listed the breakdown of their share of the $4,000 anniversary cost: venue rental, catering, photographer, materials. I wasn't charging for my time, just the direct expenses. Each invoice was personalized: $1,000 for Madison, $1,000 for Mason, and $1,000 for Mom and Dad to split. I kept the language polite but firm. This invoice reflects your portion of the expenses for the Walker 35th anniversary event held at Willow Creek. Going forward, I will only be participating in shared family events with mutual financial responsibility. I stared at the emails before sending them. Doubt crept in. Was this too much? Was I burning a bridge? Was I prepared for what came next? Then I remembered Mom handing me a plastic container, like she was doing me a favor. I pressed send. One by one. Then I closed my laptop, silenced my phone, and went to bed with the kind of deep breath you only take after you finally stop holding everything in. By the time I woke up the next morning, my inbox was already buzzing. 3 emails waited for me. One from Mom, one from Madison, and one from Mason. I braced myself and clicked the first one. From Brenda Walker. Subject: Anniversary expense breakdown. Naomi, I'm not sure what's going on with you lately, but sending invoices to your own family is completely inappropriate. We're family, not business associates. If you felt overwhelmed, you should have said something instead of putting us in this position. I'm disappointed. Disappointed. That word echoed like a slap. I had spent over a decade absorbing every disappointment they projected onto me, and now, the one time I pushed back, she was disappointed? Next, I opened Madison's email. From Madison Walker. Subject: Seriously? I can't believe you're sending bills like we're clients or something. We didn't ask you to go overboard.
You chose to spend that much.
And besides, I had my own expenses getting the yard ready for the party. Don't make this weird, Naomi. The irony of her talking about her yard expenses while I sat here with $4,000 down the drain was almost laughable. Lastly, Mason. From Mason Walker. Subject: Hey. Naomi, look, I get it. Things got messy. I probably should have helped more. I'll see if I can send something next month once we catch up on the kids' school stuff. Don't stress. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a commitment. Just another vague maybe that I'd come to expect. I didn't respond. Not yet. I needed time. But in my silence, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let their reactions derail me. Erin came over that evening, and I showed her the emails. She shook her head, unsurprised. Of course they reacted like that, she said. You flipped their whole dynamic upside down. You're not the unpaid event planner anymore. You're Naomi, a grown woman who's finally decided to stop bleeding out for people who can't even bother to say thank you. Later that week, I sat down and did something I had never done before. I made a list of my priorities. Not my family's. Not their wants.
Mine.
I started with my event planning business. I had dreams for it, real ones. A second coordinator to help with bookings, expanding into corporate retreats, creating a signature line of digital templates to sell online. I blocked off a weekend, put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and worked like my future depended on it because it did. For the first time in years, I wasn't juggling anyone else's emergencies. No calls from Mom needing me to edit photos for a church function. No late-night texts from Madison about her ex. No errands for Dad. Just me and my vision. Within a month, I had designed and launched my digital product store. Templates for event budgets, checklists, planning timelines, things I'd perfected over a decade of thankless experience. To my surprise, it took off. Orders trickled in, then poured. A wedding influencer reposted one of my designs, and overnight, I had over 100 sales. Erin squealed when she saw the numbers. "See," she said, "your talent was never the issue. It was your audience." By the end of the second month, I had enough income from my store to match what I used to make from planning 3 mid-size events. The irony wasn't lost on me. After all these years of working behind the scenes, my independence came from doing things my way. Then, one evening, as I wrapped up a video call with a new client, my phone buzzed. A message from Dad. "We need to talk. Please come by the house this Sunday." I stared at the screen. Not "can we talk," or "would you be free?" Just "come by." Just like old times, assuming I'd drop everything. I didn't reply right away. I needed to decide what version of me would walk into that house, if I walked in at all. Sunday arrived with a quiet tension in the air. I hadn't responded to Dad's message, but curiosity, or maybe closure, pulled me to the driveway of the house I once called home. I sat in my car for several minutes, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the brick front and neatly trimmed hedges like they were props in a stage play I no longer belonged to. When I finally rang the doorbell, it was Dad who answered. He looked older than I remembered, slower, more uncertain. "Naomi," he said, like the word itself was fragile. I stepped inside. The scent of Mom's vanilla candles hit me immediately, as if they were trying to mask something rotting underneath. Madison and Mason were already in the living room, seated on opposite ends of the couch. Mom sat in her usual chair, back straight, eyes unreadable. "We just wanted to clear the air," Dad began. "This whole invoice thing. It caused a lot of tension." I nodded. It wasn't meant to cause tension. It was meant to show what I've been carrying. "Well, we didn't realize you felt that way," Mom said flatly. I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't realize I felt overwhelmed after covering thousands of dollars in family expenses? Or after you moved the anniversary party without telling me, even though I spent weeks planning it?" Silence. "I get it," I said, voice steady. "I've always been the reliable one, the helper, the organizer, and you took that for granted. I take responsibility for never saying no, but that doesn't mean what you did was okay." Madison folded her arms. "You're making this into a bigger deal than it needs to be." "No," I said, meeting her eyes. "You made it a bigger deal the moment you intentionally excluded me. You could have told me. You could have shown up for me. You didn't." "I'm not asking for money back," I continued. "I'm asking for respect. I'm asking to be seen as more than the backup plan. And if that's too much for this family, then maybe it's time I stopped trying to earn my place." Mason shifted in his seat. "Naomi, I don't think anyone meant to hurt you. We've all just fallen into habits." I nodded. "Exactly. And I'm breaking that habit." I stood up. "I'm not cutting you off. I'm just done shrinking myself for your comfort. If you want to be part of my life moving forward, it'll be on mutual terms, not just convenience." No one moved. "I wish you all the best," I said, walking toward the door. "Naomi," Mom called out softly, but I didn't turn around. As I stepped outside, I felt an unexpected lightness. I didn't know what the future with my family would look like, or if there even was one, but I knew who I was now. I wasn't the fixer anymore. I was Naomi Walker, event planner, business owner, a woman who finally chose herself. And for once, that was more than enough. The months that followed were a quiet kind of powerful. I didn't send follow-up messages. I didn't chase apologies. I simply lived. I poured myself into my business and it responded in kind. Bookings rolled in, some through referrals, others through my online templates gaining traction. A corporate client hired me to plan a 3-day leadership retreat in Napa Valley, and I executed it flawlessly. That job alone earned me nearly $15,000. I used part of that income to finally take a vacation alone. I flew to Seattle, stayed in a small boutique hotel, and spent my mornings in coffee shops by the water, sketching new event ideas in a fresh notebook. I didn't check in with anyone, Didn't feel guilty for not being available. I was just Naomi. Present, unbothered, whole. One afternoon, while finalizing a vendor contract from my hotel room, I received an unexpected email. It was from a woman named Celia Harper, the editor-in-chief of a national lifestyle magazine. She'd come across my digital event templates and wanted to feature me in their spring issue. 10 women entrepreneurs who rebuilt their lives with grit and grace. I laughed when I read the subject line, because grit and grace perfectly described the journey I never saw coming. The article went live in April. There I was, smiling in a photo taken at one of my events with a quote beneath it. For years, I planned everyone else's milestones. Now I'm planning my own. The response was overwhelming. My inbox filled with notes from women across the country, some strangers, some old classmates, thanking me for putting into words what so many of them had felt. I thought I was the only one who bent until I broke, one message said. Thank you for showing it's okay to start again. My parents didn't reach out.
Neither did Madison.
Mason sent a brief message after the article. Saw the piece. Proud of you. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind me that some threads don't have to be cut. They just need space. By summer, I was living in a new apartment. Nothing extravagant, but mine. I hosted my first solo dinner party there, inviting Aaron and a few of my new vendor friends. We sat on my balcony under string lights, eating takeout and laughing so loudly the neighbors complained. It was the kind of joy that doesn't ask for permission. That night, as I cleaned up the dishes, Erin hugged me tightly. You know what I love most, she said. You didn't wait for your family to choose you. You chose yourself. And that changed everything. She was right. I had spent years giving and waiting, hoping that someday someone in my family would see me, not just as the helper, the planner, the one who kept things afloat, but as a whole person. That day never came. So, I created it for myself. And in doing so, I realized the most important milestone wasn't the anniversary party or the invoices, or even the article. It was this. Choosing to finally treat myself like I mattered. Because I do. And now I live like it. A few weeks after the magazine feature was published, something unexpected happened. I received a formal invitation in the mail. Not a text, not a phone call, but an actual envelope with my name on it in cursive writing. It was from my parents. They were hosting a small dinner at their house to acknowledge milestones and reconnect, as the card read. There was no mention of the anniversary debacle or the changed venue. No apology. Just an open door. I sat with the invitation for hours. Aaron urged me not to go. You've come so far, Naomi. Don't let them pull you back into their script. But I wasn't planning to fall into old patterns. I was planning to rewrite them. So, I went. When I arrived, the living room looked like a stage again. Spotless furniture, Mom's best serving dishes on display, the familiar scent of cinnamon candles burning to signal hospitality. But the energy was cautious. They weren't sure who I was anymore. They weren't sure how to talk to me now that I wasn't trying to prove my worth every second. We sat down for dinner. The usual small talk flowed. Mason talked about a new job he'd applied for. Madison showed off photos from a recent vacation. It wasn't until dessert that my dad cleared his throat and said, "We saw the article. That was impressive." "Thank you," I said simply. "We didn't realize how much you've built on your own," Mom added, her tone unusually measured. I nodded. That was the point. You never did. The room went quiet. "I know tonight is your way of trying," I said. "And I appreciate the gesture. But a dinner isn't enough to erase the years of being overlooked." Madison crossed her arms.
"So, what do you want?"
"A trophy." I looked at her evenly.
"No."
"I want accountability. I want you to stop pretending like the things that happened didn't hurt just because you weren't the one hurting." Mason shifted uncomfortably. "She's right," he said quietly. I turned to my parents. "This isn't about bitterness. It's about clarity. I'm not angry. I'm just done hoping for change from people who never saw a problem to begin with." I stood up before the night turned into another performance. "I'm leaving now," I said, looking each of them in the eye. "But I want you to know this. I'm not rejecting you. I'm just finally choosing me over all of you." Then I walked out. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. But it was real. And that was more powerful than any apology they were never brave enough to give. Driving home that night, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. There was no emotional breakdown, no temptation to call Aaron and rehash every detail. I just drove in silence with the windows down, the wind brushing against my face like a quiet confirmation. I had done the right thing. That dinner wasn't closure, it was confirmation. Confirmation that I'd outgrown the version of myself who waited for crumbs and called them love. The version who overcompensated with gifts, effort, and silence, hoping someone would finally say, "Thank you," and mean it. The next morning, I woke up to an inbox full of new inquiries for event planning, 3 baby showers, 1 luxury corporate gala, and a request to speak at a local women's entrepreneur brunch in Austin. Apparently, the article had legs. Women who'd read my story saw something of themselves in it. They weren't just hiring me for flowers and guest lists. They were hiring me because they trusted someone who had walked through fire and made beauty out of ashes. I accepted the speaking engagement without hesitation. It was held in a glass-walled conference center overlooking Lady Bird Lake. The room was full of women from all walks of life, some in business suits, others in yoga pants, but all of them listening with intent. When I stepped up to the podium, I didn't bring a PowerPoint. I didn't quote statistics. I told my story, the real one, about being taken for granted, about pouring myself out for others until I didn't recognize my own reflection, about planning an entire anniversary party with care, only to be discarded like I was invisible, and about the day I stopped waiting for people to honor me and decided to honor myself. When I finished, there was a long silence, then applause. Afterward, a woman about my age approached me, tears in her eyes. "You said what I've never been brave enough to say," she whispered. "You made me believe I don't have to keep shrinking." That moment stayed with me, because I remembered how I used to think my worth was tied to what I could do for others, how valuable I was to my family, how needed I was at every event, how much I could absorb without complaint. But not anymore. My next project was a charity gala benefiting domestic abuse survivors. I poured everything into it: theme, design, budget, and coordination. The event raised over $50,000, and the nonprofit featured me in their newsletter. This time, the spotlight didn't scare me, because I knew who I was now. I wasn't the middle child, the helper, or the extra seat at the table. I was Naomi. And I was finally seated at my own. Months passed, and my calendar filled with the kind of clients I used to dream about, people who respected my creativity, trusted my decisions, and paid me what I was worth. I moved out of my small rental apartment and into a bright 2-bedroom loft in a quieter part of Austin, one with floor-to-ceiling windows and hardwood floors that gleamed in the afternoon light. It wasn't just a nicer space. It felt like a reflection of who I had become. Aaron came over one evening with takeout and a bottle of wine. We sat on the floor of my new living room, eating noodles straight from the container and laughing until our faces hurt. Somewhere in the middle of it, she raised her chopsticks and said, "You know, I always knew you'd get here. You just had to stop dragging the whole damn family on your back." That hit me harder than I expected, because she was right. For so long, I believed I had to carry everyone. Mom's pride, Dad's expectations, Madison's jealousy, Mason's failures. I thought that was my role. The fixer, the giver, the one who didn't need anything in return. Now I had given all that up and gained everything I never thought I could have. One day, while organizing an engagement party for a young couple, I received a voicemail from Mason. He sounded hesitant, almost embarrassed. "Hey, Naomi. I wanted to say thank you
For everything you did.
I never really said it before, and I should have. I'm trying to be better." I didn't return the call, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to anymore. Forgiveness isn't always about reconnection. Sometimes it's just about releasing yourself from the weight of other people's silence. My parents never reached out again after that dinner. Madison occasionally posted passive-aggressive captions on social media, but it didn't sting like it used to. I had found something better than their approval. I had found peace. And in that peace, I found purpose. I started mentoring younger women in the event planning space, teaching them how to advocate for their worth, set boundaries with clients, and say no without guilt. I held workshops in coffee shops and co-working spaces, and slowly, a small community of brave, creative, unapologetic women began to form around me. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about creating the kind of environment I'd spent my whole life searching for. One where no woman had to question whether she deserved to be treated with respect. Because now I knew I always had. Exactly 1 year after the disastrous 35th anniversary incident, I stood under a canopy of white lights at a rooftop venue I had personally designed. This time, the event wasn't for a client. It was mine. A celebration of my business's 1-year anniversary under its rebranded name, Rooted Grace Events, named for what I had finally grown into, someone strong, grounded, and unshakably whole. The air was cool, music floated gently from the speakers, and the space was alive with people who believed in me, clients, collaborators, and friends who had become like family. Erin clinked her glass against mine and whispered, "You made it." And I had. No one here had shown up out of obligation. No one was pretending. They weren't clapping for a title they didn't understand or expecting favors in return. They were celebrating me, Naomi, the woman who used to pay bills at 18 while others got to be kids, who planned entire parties for people who never said thank you, who poured herself into her family only to be discarded like an afterthought. That woman had shed her skin, piece by painful piece, until only truth remained. A few guests asked about my family, but I didn't dodge the question. I told the truth in brief, graceful terms. There had been distance, there had been pain, and I had chosen healing over returning to what broke me. Later that night, I stood alone for a moment on the balcony, looking out over the Austin skyline, the wind soft against my face. I thought of the younger version of me, planning her parents' party with trembling hands and hopeful eyes, believing that maybe this time they'd finally see her. And I thought of the woman I had become, the one who no longer needed to be seen to know she was real. When I stepped back into the party, a young woman greeted me at the door. She looked barely 23 and nervously introduced herself as a new planner trying to figure things out. "You're kind of my role model," she said, her voice a whisper. I smiled, not with pride, but with understanding, because I had once been her. And now I could be the person I used to look for in others. The woman who didn't wait for validation. The woman who built her own table when no one offered her a seat. The woman who became free. My name is Naomi, and I'm 30 years old. And this is the life I built, without them. And I've never been more proud. If you found Naomi's journey as powerful and emotional as we did, make sure to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more real, raw, and inspiring stories like this to life. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story that just might change the way you see the world.